Peanut really let us down, Chovy let us down on an individual level. And so people are going to be quick to focus on them, but they seem to have bounced back really well.
Yep.
And I don't think Peanut's like the best jungler in the world, but I think Peanut provides such crazy value in terms of shot calling. Like the stats that we're seeing in vision control, the stats that we're seeing in minion control and farm control, these are Peanut stats.
You need that player as well if you're going to have Chovy, because let's be real, that has always been the downside of Chovy. He is the guy who sits and silently farms and gets all the CS. But I've always said in League, the dream is that the guy with all the farm can also tell you what he wants you to do. So he's not going to do that. He just farms. And that's why on the bad DRX back in the day, it used to be just him in a side lane on his own. Like in this, you need Peanut because he actually sort of pilots the team to me.
Yeah, and I think Chovy has become more vocal, but yeah, I think Peanut, you're absolutely right. From what I know from talking to people who are part of GenG, who know the comms, like Peanut is the biggest voice on that team by a large margin. And the way that they play is so predicated on, I talk about this on my Bangers Only streams when I do their VOD review, where I try and teach people how to appreciate GenG, because what they're doing is not obvious. Like I brought up a moment when they were playing Breon where we see a TP from Chovy that's just, from basically tier 2 and bot lane into just past tier 1. But the reason is that he's perfectly syncing a wave on the opposite side of the map with the Fiora, and they push in both waves simultaneously 30 seconds before dragon spawns, sweep through the jungle and get dragon control. They're playing blue side, so they sweep through the blue side jungle of red side. League of Legends is confusing when you say things like that. Get the dragon control, then take it, put themselves on soul point, and don't even fight, but they use a TP in order to get themselves a crucial objective and get into the game. And people will say, oh yeah, Chovy is just good at farming in his lane, but you also, which he is, but you also have to look at how he is farming the entire map, how he is going into these side lanes, how he is creating scenarios of insane macro pressure, how he's making brilliant on the fly decision making, like we saw last week. Go watch that top 5 where he stops this TP into the top side. That level of decision making in that moment was crazy.
Yes.
And so he has actually very good macro awareness. He's not tunneled on his lane. He may be tunneled on getting incremental advantages and being huge, but the thing is that he's also really efficient with the gold that he gets. He's a crazy mechanical player. So he knows the more gold I get, the better GenG is going to do. And you may not like the way that GenG play. You may not like that they play a vision game. You may not like that they manipulate minion waves super well. You may not like that they set up minion waves to provide pressure to get free objectives, which makes them not fight maybe as much as other teams. And you may think it's boring, but they are playing an extremely high level strategic version of League of Legends. And they are the Python team that slowly crushes you out on the map. And it's not in a boring way either, where it's like, oh, we have bad mechanical players that are going to, win because they have 2,000 more gold each than you. They are going to smash you because they have Chovy and Pays, who has been insanely mechanically good. And they used to have Ruler, right? So they have the flash in them, but they will you are constantly fighting on GenG's playing field when you are against them. And that is hard to do. That is hard to do. They're not as fun to watch as T1 from I'm going to set up this play from a half a screen away and snipe you like we saw this last week when they were playing DRX, when they play like Nidalee, Varus, Caitlyn, and they just one-shot barrel with a chain of corruption from an entire screen away, a Nidalee spear and a Caitlyn Q. Like, that's fun to watch. But GenG, you should appreciate them, and they are better than you think they are because you aren't watching what they are good at.
And also, here's the thing. I always say about players like Chovy, if you try to tell me he's the absolute, God, best, perfect, then I'm going to seem like I'm just criticizing him. But if you tell me he's not good, I'm going to have to become the biggest Chovy fan of all time, because miss me with that line. Because even that line, it's totally reductive, like you say. He's definitely way better than just late now. But even that line, like they say about Larson as well, it's like, all he does, Monty, is just go up in CS every game. Like, every single we start in the lane every single time, you know, like there's a laning phase that happens at the beginning of every game. Like if you can consistently get leads, one, you are just like one of the absolute best players in the entire world because everyone's trying to do that. And two, that is how you build the rest of the game out. Like if you're always winning in one lane, jungler now knows what to do, drafts make more sense, what you're going to do with the macro play. Mate, it sets so much of the team in place. There's no he's just winning in CS. Everyone's trying to be good at that. Every single player in the world. And then also, let's be real, when you talk about that angle, that's like saying in like MMA, like, oh, he's just really good at boxing with like an amazing jab. Like every fight starts on the feet. Boxing and jab would control a whole fight. Again, like the person doesn't even have to have all the finishes. They're going to be in winning positions over and over and over and over again. That's why the joke is this. I get that Chovy seems like a player with certain flaws that could ruin a team. But mate, he's the player where if you're a coach with ambition, this is exactly who you want to coach. Because if you work it out, you're going to look like a genius. You go to the top. Like what an amazing, if you can essentially cover up his weaknesses, then he can look like the perfect player.
I mean, and here's the crazy thing about GenG that'll blow some of your minds. Like, Chovy is middle of the table right now as far as mid laners go in percentage of CS taken after 15 minutes. He's right in the middle. He's 6th place in the league. He takes 25.6% of his team's farm after 15 minutes into the game. Zeka takes 30.6%, so 5 whole percent more. Right. Meanwhile, Chovy is the highest player in the entire in mid lane for earned gold per minute. So what this tells you is he's taking 5% less farm than Zeka, but GenG is so good at squeezing every last piece of gold out of the map that he is still number 1 in earned gold per minute. In an absolute stat, he is still number 1. Now that tells you something about GenG.
Yes.
And no other team in the world does this, by the way. They are unique. Like T1 and GenG have very different styles, but both of them have very unique styles. And that's what makes them fun to watch. It's just to plebs, GenG is boring.
The problem you have is this,
educated League of Legends fan.
Basically, when you wrote that article at the beginning of 2013, when CJ Enters Players was number 1, called The Sixth Man, about how they would set up minion waves to go in and farm them, the joke is you didn't realize fans would never be on that level. Because the problem
they would never understand setting up a stacked minion wave to apply pressure while you fight.
That's still what that is what this team does, and this team does it amazingly. But the problem is it's nuanced. If you're not looking at the lens, you don't know what. To you, it's just like I imagine that fan Monty must be the fan who just watches like in the moment. They're watching the action. So to them, they're just like, oh, what the hell? The fight didn't. You had to go and clear the top with. That was set up minutes earlier. That's not an accident. They're not just the luckiest team of all time, and there's just a big minion wave there. Like they're setting that up. Like that's what also makes this macro genius. Is like it's so hard when you're playing against that if you don't know the correct like counter move at that point. You're just getting trapped, and as you say, it's why you use like the ball constrict. You're just getting choked out gradually. You just feel like less and less air, and you can't do anything. And the more you wriggle, the more fucked you are.
Yeah, and you also just don't see it coming because GenG is thinking 2 minutes in advance. They probably think 30 seconds to 1 minute further in advance than most other teams.
Which is the coach's dream.
Yeah, it is, because it's that art of war shit, man. Like, don't fight the fight. You control the objective without ever having to fight them, and you win the game.
Yep.
I love that. I'm famous for loving this kind of style, right? Other people do not love it.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.